Hello everyone, and welcome to a short video on our own devices, aka the forgotten weapons we have at home. I'm Jean Messier, and I'm out here at the range in authentic 1950s RCAF winter gear, having a look at a forgotten weapon that Ian McCollum strangely hasn't gotten around to covering yet. This is an M4 aircrew survival rifle. This was introduced in USAF and RCAF service in 1949 to replace the variety of civilian and military weapons that had previously been used for this purpose, including the Savage Model 24 and the M1A1 folding paratroop variant of the M1 carbine. Now, these were not really intended for self-defense against enemy personnel during escape and evasion, but rather to allow aircrew who were brought down in wilderness areas to forage for small game. Now, these were manufactured by Harrington and Richardson based on their M264 civilian sporting rifle. And this is a simple bolt-action rifle fed from a 5-round detachable box magazine and chambered in .22 Hornet centerfire, a very common cartridge for this type of survival rifle. So as you can see, this has been considerably cut down. It's been fitted with a telescoping wire stock and a detachable barrel, allowing it to pack down to only 14 inches or 35.5 centimeters long, small enough to fit in an ejection seat survival kit. So to extend the stock, you simply pull it out and it will lock on this little spring-loaded detent. And to fold it back up again, you push in the detent and push the stock back in. Very similar to an M3 grease gun. And we also have this folded sheet metal pistol grip, a front blade sight with protector wings, a Lyman rear aperture sight. You have a disassembly screw on the left side of the receiver and a rocking safety switch on the right side. So really not much to this. It's a very simple little rifle. Now, a little more than 29,000 of these were produced in total, with this particular example being produced for the Royal Canadian Air Force by the Harrington and Richardson plant in Drummondville, Quebec. Now, unfortunately, these did not enjoy a very long service life. By 1952, they had been almost completely supplanted by the M6 aircrew survival weapon, which was a break-action soup combination gun with a .22 Hornet barrel on top and a .410 shotgun barrel underneath. And not only was this weapon more versatile than the M4, but it also had an exposed bar trigger, which made it easier to use with heavy gloves or mittens. Very useful if you were, for example, a Strategic Air Command B-52 crewman flying airborne alert missions over the Arctic. If you want to learn more about the M6, head over to Forgotten Weapons and check out Ian's video on that subject. Now, despite being officially supplanted by the M6, small numbers of M4s continued to be issued until existing stocks were either depleted or surplus. And in 1954, Armalite came up with a prospective replacement for both the M4 and the M6 called the AR-5. Like the M4, this was a bolt-action magazine-fed rifle chambered in .22 Hornet, though instead of a telescoping wire stock, it had a hollow fiberglass stock in which you could pack the barrel and receiver. And in 1956, the Air Force officially adopted the AR-5, intending to issue it to crews of the North American XB-70 Valkyrie supersonic bomber, then under development. However, when the Valkyrie was eventually canceled, the Air Force decided that its existing stocks of M6s and M4s were perfectly adequate. They never purchased more than an initial batch of 12 AR-5s. Now, Armalite, undeterred, further developed the AR-5 into a semi-automatic version chambered in .22 rimfire, the famous AR-7. And while that was mainly sold as a civilian sporting rifle, highly modified versions were adopted by the Israeli Air Force as aircrew survival weapons. Now, today, USAF aircrew are mainly issued with the GAU-58, which is a shortened takedown version of the M4 carbine in 5.56. Right, so let's actually try this out and see how it shoots. I have a box of Hornet .22 Hornet cartridges. Interestingly, the cartridges that were originally issued with these rifles were soft tip for maximum effect against small game. However, according to the 1899 Hague Convention, use of expanding ammunition in warfare is illegal. And so the boxes came with this very boldly printed warning not to use this ammunition against human targets. Now, I'm going to have a couple of rabbit targets set up at around 50 yards, which is maximum range you'd want to use something like this. Now, I am by no means the world's best shot, and this does not look particularly comfortable to use, but I suppose this will make for a more realistic demonstration because I doubt that aircrew in the 1950s would have had much trigger time on these either. So let's see if I was shot down in the wilderness, whether I'd be able to supplement my diet with some wild meat, or whether I'd be stuck eating iron rations. All right, so here we are 3 weeks later. Those of you who saw the original version of the video will know that the rifle refused to fire. The cartridges were getting light strikes and the primers just weren't going off. We played around it a little bit. It's still a little dubious. It will fire sometimes and not others, so I'll fire off a couple of magazines, and if some of them go off, then we'll see how accurate it is. All right, let's try this out. Nope. All right, that one worked. Okay, so I didn't hit a damn thing from way back there, so I'm going to go up a little bit closer and see if this thing can hit anything at all. Dud. Okay. Dud. All right, let's see how that worked. So shooting closer up, I actually managed to make a couple of hits here on top, a near miss there, and then 2 hits down there. Though in the latter case, that took a little bit of adjustment of the rear sight, which I found was a little bit loose, but of course this thing has been sitting in storage for decades. But of course, that was when this actually decided to fire at all. And given how unreliable this is, how few times the cartridge actually went off, I don't think I would trust this to get me any supper if I were shot down in the wilderness. I'd probably be eating iron rations. Now, why this is so unreliable, I have no idea. It could be an ammunition issue, it could be a head spacing issue. If any of you out there are gunsmiths and can diagnose the issue, let's go over to the light box and I'll show you how the bolt actually disassembles. Right, so here we have our M4 bolt. The rifle this was derived from, the H&R 265 Targeteer, was chambered in 22 rimfires. This originally would have had an offset firing pin that fit in this groove to strike the rim of the cartridge. However, as you can see, this has been modified to accommodate a centrally mounted firing pin for the centerfire 22 Hornet cartridge. To take this apart, you simply unthread the rear of the bolt, which contains the firing pin spring and this cocking indicator. Then off slips the bolt handle and this camming surface, which draws back the spring and firing pin. You can then remove these washers. And finally, the firing pin. Now, as far as I can tell, these washers are the cause of the unreliability issue. Since the bolt locks on the shoulder of the bolt handle, perfectly adequate for this application as this fires a very low-powered cartridge, these washers dictate how far forward the bolt face sits and thus the head spacing. Originally, there was only one of these washers, but when I added another made out of thin plastic, the reliability of the rifle improved. And here is your fully stripped M4 survival rifle bolt. So if any of you know what the problem might be, please let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, it was really fun to come out here and try this out on the range. This is a nice, light, handy, and surprisingly comfortable gun to shoot, the reliability issues notwithstanding, and just a cool piece of firearms and aviation history. Anyway, I'll see you next time in another video or look at yet more firearms and other neat devices just like this. Until then, I'm Jean Messier from Our Own Devices. Have a great day.